Okay. Okay.
Professor Hočevar, you are having approximately 40 to 45 minutes for your presentation, and afterwards our habit is to go on with the questions, suggestions, and it's always very dynamic. So I'm very much looking forward to hear firstly how an architect reflects society, and then comments on how we as researchers reflect your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so I will start now. Thank you very much for invitation. I'm really happy to be with you, all of you. Hello for everybody. And I will talking about an architect reflection of society. So this is more of a, I should say, this is not so serious. I should say that this is more of a, if I use this word, of a teaser, because otherwise, because I'm a sociologist, I could ask myself how can or how I reflect the physical space. So it would be pretty much fair if I said it. But of course, my intention, of course, is I will say it again. A word, it's a bit cheesy, but it's all coming together. So sociologists, or let's say in wider sense, in social sciences, so anthropologists and others, how we can come together in these times of complexity, complications, although it's not the same complications and the complexity, how can we come together with our notion of space? Because mostly, I'm talking about making space or remaking or reproduction of space or production of space. So this is my intention. And I will start with this one, which is a bit weird, I think. And this is from last year. This is the proposition of American architecture studio or office, opposite office. They envisioned fortifying the US Capitol after, January 21 events. I will not politicize, I promise you. So it's not about that. But it's a really, really good example, in a way, a peculiar way, how we come together. So obvious, in a way, it's a provocation, but the intention of those architects is quite serious, but of course, not so serious in building terms. They really don't want to build it, or they want to build it if needed, if everything goes in the right directions, even now or in the future. So as you can see, they said with 36 feet thick walls, Capitol Castle has thicker walls than Chateau de Ham, and with all that superlatives and so on. So, but for me, what is more important is that they said that building architecture or architecture buildings, it's not what the intention of contemporary architecture should be, because the profession and everything about the profession of architects and other professions is changing. So in a way, we are going towards there, I would say, as a bifurcation. So in a way, we are going in one direction. One is specialization, even more and even more, and we cannot understand each other even within the social sciences. So it's more difficult and difficult. But on the other side, there is equally important trend, I think, that somehow we are coming, we are finding common grounds within our disciplines, but also across disciplines. And I think that talking of space, of physical space, and in our case, social space, I think this is a perfect example of that trend, that double trend, which we are witnessing. And so let's go now to the presentation. But before I go to presentation, I just want to say that this is some kind of sociology of architecture, which I'm now forming it. I'm not alone, so I'm not discovering the wheel, of course. There are some very young colleagues, especially in Germany, in Technical University in Berlin, doing on that. So as always with the subdisciplines, it takes some time and with epistemologies and everything else. And it's somehow contradictory of what I wanted to say, because it's against specialization within the urban sociology or communities or whatever spatial thing or spatial sociology is. And this is the context of my presentation and the point of discussions, I hope, for later on. So adopting of specific ontology of space, I think, has cognitive and methodological consequences. So we can talk about building space or reproduction of space in terms of praxis. So how can we do it, or how they do it, or whatever, or how we think. You can see already about me. Sorry, and another way of thinking, it's of course more academia-wise. So it's more about methodology, even ontology or whatever. So they're both ways. So both are, I think, important. And in previous ways, I mean, in previous periods, up to the, let's say, in the mid of 20th century, it was all about practice, and it was all about architects or builders or construction engineers, that they were doing everything, you know. And of course, sociologists or those from social sciences, even philosophers, they talked about it, of course, but they couldn't come through and collaborate with them seriously. So they were just a kind of some kind of let's say conversations and self-referencing, and so, but nothing else, or nothing more substantially. So these 5 points, I think, would be my my topics. So first is, how can the issue of how an architect reflects society can be addressed, or if there is an issue at all. So some would say we cannot do anything. So you know, architects are architects, sociologists are sociologists. So we are far apart, or we are something collaborating, and so we are thinking that, they are thinking that. So some people would say still, although less and less, they would say that it is not an issue at all. So this is first thing. The second thing is architects' reflection on society through the time, which is, I think, very important. So some kind of historiography, but very simple, in simple terms, I think would help. And also the question, this is also the side question, is it that reflection, that historical or time reflection? Because time is also very important where we're talking about the production of space. It's not just space, but it's also time. And architects are very often atemporal, because they're thinking differently about time scales. But anyway, the side question is it significantly different today? I mean, reflection of architects. So, and here at the point 2, I would like to say, as I said in announcement, that I don't want to confront, or I don't want to be social, or even less cultural critic of sociology, of architect and architectural practice, not at all. So my point is really coming together. And as I will see later, I'm completely obsessed from the beginning of my professional career with I think the most crucial sociological point, which is diversity of integration, or integration of diversity. I think it's even more important than holy grail of sociology, which is inequality, stratification, and so. Or they are both very important, and I don't think that that difference, talking about difference, is just about culture and just about identities and so. I think it's very important overall in sociology, and this is the second point. So the third point would be knowledge acquisition in architecture. So here we are coming to the question if scientification of architecture as a scientification of architecture as a research topic, which is now really serious, and I'm within one project, huge project, just right now that we are dealing with them. We are dealing with the architectural education through practice on PhD level, but something on that later on. So, is it make any difference if you are talking about knowledge acquisition in architecture? So, is it praxis and theory? It would make any difference at all? So this is another sub question. So the fourth one is integration of diversity of cognitions. So it will be my take, although again, as I say now, I'm not discovering a wheel, but I think it's quite specific. I mean, take on diversity of cognitions, because I think that here lies the main problem with not just collaboration, but the integration of our cognitions, of our thinking about space. Of maybe if you're talking more in academia terms, it's more about epistemic culture, but this is too complicated, and it could be another presentation for another time. So, and the fifth one is architect in the future. So we can see again this picture and this statement at the right hand side. So it's what is the building of architecture, or architects, are they building buildings? They are doing architecture, or they are doing just architectural stories? Because after all, they are computers. There are many tools that placing architects in really weird position, that everything can be done without them. Although it's not, of course, entirely true, but it's the same everywhere. Maybe behind that question lies artificial intelligence, and so on and so on. So architect in the future. So is it no longer building houses, but building architectural stories? Or, and this is some question that derives from that, is it architecture still profession on what it is now? Because some say thousands of professions or half professions will appear every year and in the future, and probably not just working places, but also the professions will disappear as they were up to now, or in previous time. So here I side with the points. So what the profession is: an architect is a profession who plans, designs, and oversees the construction of buildings. So obviously, from or Latin or Greek, whatever. So it is something. It is nothing new, but it's still prevailing as a definition. And if I put some sociological point, and Bourdieu could be quite instrumental for that. As he said, a field is an objective setting in which agents and their social positions are located. So, okay, let's go then. First, how can the issue be addressed, and if there is an issue? As I said before, it couldn't be an issue at all. So we are words apart. I mean, social scientists or observers outside of architecture, and you cannot do anything about it. But I think it's not true. So I think the issue should be addressed, and it's important issue. So here I cite quite prominent quote from Pierre Bourdieu: social practice has logic other than logic of logics. So he's playing with the different logics, I will say cognitions of physical space. And as you all know, the geometrical or material or whatever, I mean, even aesthetical logic is quite different if you are talking with a sociologist or social scientist or average person on the street, or with architects. So, but as I said before, if I ask myself the question of the architect reflection of society, it would be just fair to ask sociology's reflection on space. So here we are now, space against or space versus society. And of course, the general statement is self-evident. The former derived from the perspective of physical space, and the later from the perspective of social space. And we are again at the Bourdieu. Otherwise, there are other authors that I could refer on. But and just thinking about distance, the meaning of distance during the COVID-19. So sociologists, we were revolting about how epidemiologists understands I mean that distancing, and distance, for example, is quite powerful I mean term for architects and for sociologists. It's about a measuring in a way, but it's about of perception. So the question that makes more sense, I think, in this realm, how do we get together, as I said now many times, on space and society? Or this is the same question, but differently put, or how to reconcile the fact that built space is a static in relative term, and society is dynamic. I think this is the fundamental difference that causes the condition, that causes the different cognitions and even in ontologies of space. So here we are. I mean, physical space or materiality or physical space in particular, I mean, built space in particular, is a static one, mostly. Of course, we can talk about renovation or erasing buildings or whatever. We are using sometimes sealed land, which is more in terms of ecology and everything, that we sealed all land. So anyway, if we are erasing the buildings or the structures or the assemblages, cities, villages, or whatever, they are still there, and we cannot use it properly as in previous time for agriculture or whatever. So the space is static and society is more or less dynamic. I'm really sorry. And society is more or less dynamic, more or less, of course. So with that dynamism, we can talk about many things. You know, it is not the same like change, social changes. It is not the same like progress or digression or whatever, but dynamics. It's just moving around, also in the space, of course. So this is all relative, but I think it's important. And the last one in the question, how can the issue be addressed, is we can ask the question of reflexivity. We all know, probably we are all social scientists here, I assume, and we are all doing, I mean, we are using reflexivity, the term reflexivity, whether is it from Giddens or on any other sociologist or philosopher or whatever, but we are talking about reflexivity as a holy grail of understanding of modern or postmodern or whatever society. And so we can ask the question of reflexivity from different starting point. So that's why I will now talk about the cognitions. So the nature professions and through epistemic culture via sciences and research. So as I said before, we can talking also about that. So one is practice, where reflexivity is still important, and one is our academic theories, conceptions, or whatever it is. But however we take it, is it let's say common sense or in everyday life, or is it high science or methodology and epistemology and everything? So we can talk then within epistemic culture, but I think it's better to talk about different cognitions of space. So if you are going further, and I cite another philosopher, sociologists, and everything similar, Henri Lefebvre, and you can see up his famous, I think, description of social space and how it's constructed and how we see it and how others see it and so on. So in the beginning was a topos, he said, long before the advent of the logos. So again, he's playing with logos thing. What is logical? And as I said before, of course, social practice has a logic other than logic of logics. So presumably, architects are a kind of, let's say, spatial logicians, more than anything else. Of course, I will come to that. But if you're talking about, let's say, spatial thinking or social thinking on space or whatever, we cross the words. So spatial thinking of the social is about where things are or where they happen, and it is special about where they are in relation to others. But here, I think architects and sociologists or social scientists or even average person on the street would say, yeah, it makes sense. So the second thing is social thinking is a consideration of the relative locations of social phenomena. So we're thinking about, again, of locations, which is spatial or social, as causes local patterns and its consequences. So the third one, social structures and processes shape the spatial form. We sociologists say, but in a way, maybe just with the different descriptions, pretty much the same would say an architect. So we are talking about assemblages. I would like to talk about assemblages instead of cities, villages, suburban areas, or whatever. And I'm alluding, if you know Bruno Latour, the philosopher, he's obsessed with his theory ANT, effort network theory, that assemblages are everything. If there are few people or few objects or whatever, he doesn't discriminate between object and subject or subject and whatever. And also, I think, that's why I prefer to talk that I'm spatial sociologist, not all urban or rural or community studies sociologist or whatever, because those assemblages are weird. They are not the same as they were. One is coming to another. We don't know what city is, what suburban areas are, for example, in Slovenia, which is mainly suburban and village country. You never know when you are in the city, or even if there is any city. But this is another question. So space is the material condition of the social. There is no doubt about that. This is very obvious. So space, in other words, is shaped by and shapes us and thus produces structure. So here we are the conditions and structure. And in sociology, we are talking about agency as structure and everything, you know. But as we will see, also in architects, they are using very similar vocabulary, but of course, with their cognition, they are thinking differently. And then, of course, for, let's say, for architects and for the sociologists, although in different meanings, the container space, which is building or whatever, or territory, which is political, or house, or is just a part of social relation and social processes. So this is the relation between social and spatial, and similarities and differences on sociological and architectural reviews. So then the second thing, again about the dialectics or duality between social and spatial, and I see again some common grounds. So as you can see, I'm really not confrontational with an architect. I want to be collaborative, at least, if not integrative. So dialectic of spatial form and social processes. So we are talking about the same thing. We are talking about action structure. I mean, sociologists or anthropologists or whatever, or even philosophers in some way, about action and structure as a, if I use again that word, as a holy grail of never resolved question in society. So it is like the theoretical physics, that they don't know how to reconcile cosmology and quantum physics. So I think it's the same problem. I mean, we never know, of course. So there are hundreds of theories and everything, and this is action and structure dilemma. So for architects, it's quite similar. It's a form functional duality. So in a way, so social relations or societies are formed, but also structured. This is the fact. And this is action structure dilemma. Buildings also have shape or form, and they are structures, or they're structured. Although, of course, they are famously talking about form and functionality, or form and function. And this is the same problem as within sociology with action and structure, you know. There are 100 different, definitions, people, architects, they are talking about that. What is one, what is another? Is it still relevant or is not relevant? And so. And the third thing is, most social institutions are, understood very similarly, spatially and socially. And this we are teaching first grade students about, that institutions are not buildings, or they are not just buildings, but it's something more. For example, school, church, or market are the same at the same time architectural forms, or let's say entities. But their entities, institutions are entities also in sociology. So, and also connotations, or let's say manifestations of institutions as a buildings, and institutions as a, let's say, as a social facts or a social assemblages is the same. So forms such as subordination or subordination, exchange, conflict, sociability, and content and form. So I wanted to say that there are some basic common grounds, and I think Georges Pompidou Center is, I think, the prime example of that. You know, So if you ask architect or sociologists, they will describe it with the different words, but they will all know what is the purpose of it, to show everything, everything is on display. It's an institution, but it's also technical, aesthetic, and so on building. So I think this is quite, and also, but this is, I'll go through this very quickly. So social spatial, some basic grounds again. We are sailing on the same boat, as I said. So modernization, rationalization, whatever we call it, formalization, structural differentiation, it sounds complicated, maybe for an architect, and it's just talking and talking and talking, but it's pretty much the same thing. For example, modernization. What is modernization? Although, of course, modernism as a movement in architecture, it's quite different than modernization as a social process. But basically, it's the same. It's something new. It's something progressive. Let's say progressive, whatever. We say Gemeinschaft, Gesellschaft, and so. And again, we are talking about agency structure and change. So individualization instead of following the structure and so. And rationalization is the same. So architects are very rational. They are of course dealing with aesthetics or visual or beauty, but they are dealing, of course, with material rigidity and everything, and so on and so on. So and at the end, of course, is reflexivity, which is, they maybe don't talk about how reflexive they are or should be or whatever. We are talking about much. Of course, we are a kind of, spin doctors on words and definitions and so. I'm joking a bit, but so reflexivity. So what is reflexivity? It is mediating mechanism between structural properties or the individual social context and so on and so on, and action and so. And so again, social spatial, and again, common grounds. So there are quite few cross-referencing from the beginning of thinking of space, from Greece, ancient Greece and Rome and so. But it's true that when we are progressing towards modernity or toward against traditional society, of course, those cross-referencing is much more pronounced, and it making sense for one part and another. So I just mentioned Simmel, Durkheim, Lefebvre, or I could mention many others, of course. For example, enfant, teribble of sociology, now it's, of course, it's very modern. I think also because he was talking about then he was talking about the need to talk with the builders, with the architects, and so explicitly with his lecture and so. So permeation between form and content, and materiality and social relations. So this is and his social geometry is case in point, of course. So Mies van der Rohe and Le Corbusier were they were influenced by Georg Simmel and some other later on. I would say also with some philosophers, of course, like Heidegger, obviously, and some others, but Emil Durkheim, like Parsons lately, so-called functionalists, applied analysis of social life in the principles of biology. Okay, we are rejecting now it mostly, but still, there were references of life organism follow function. So it's the same mood. And Henri Lefebvre, which is of course first real philosopher and thinker, social thinker about space. We are locating him in 60s, 70s, and so. Marxist thinker, or let's say critical thinker, researched the function of the built environment, and he thought about history and logic, and again logic, in order to build a materialist perspective. So such constructions, as he would say, are essential to the human created surroundings. And architects or architecture critics, or I mean theoreticians, would say pretty much the same. Again, basic grounds for Simmel, just to mention what he said: exclusivity or uniqueness of space. Space is subdivided and bordered for social purposes, localizing or fixing social interaction. All social interactions could be characterized with proximity and distance, and so. And that was talking about last 2 years within COVID situation, for example. So we are coming now to the crucial point. Oh my God, it's 45 now. Okay, so again, I'm citing those two previous authors. Social practice has a logic other than logic of logics. In the beginning, and so on and so on. So, and this is my take on all of this. I think that we should understand that there are really different, different spatial cognitions among us, among architects, among other practitioners, engineers. They can be both, of course, and let's say social scientists or social observers, not necessarily all in academia or whatever, but social observers. And this is my take on it. You can see here 3 different dices of paper, and I describe it as a 3 cognitions. So first 2 would be, let's say, typical architectural positions or cognitions, but not necessarily always in the same proportion, of course. As you probably know, some are more artists, some are more engineers, some are more, and I can see it because I'm teaching architectural students and also sociological students, and I can see the difference. And let's say they are both first and 2. Let's say rational, their thinking is rational, in that sense more, let's say, than reflective or descriptive, and it's geometric. They're coming from education that taught them about those things, and that's why, of course. And let's say in German words, Fachschule is a typical example of let's say very outmoded architectural schools. So they are more inclined to engineering, but rational geometric is what I mean with engineering, structural, and so on and so on. So this is the first one, the left one. So it is the dice of paper which is, let's say, structured, and they are with their minds. They are very much, especially those inclined in engineering things or constructing things. So more than those second, which are, I think, more artistically inclined. But again, even if they are more artistically inclined, they are still think differently, and their cognition is still different than ours, for example, than mine of sociologists. Even though I'm doing with urbanistic teams, with an architect as a consultant and everything, But anyway, we can understand each other, but still, we have a different education and everything. So it is the point of education is really important. And the third one, I would call it narrative or analytical, both. I think in cultural studies or in cultural critique, it's more narrative, of course. In, let's say, classical sociology, it's more analytical, empirical, and everything else, But anyway, we are describing things with words and with our imagination, and we are writing a text mostly. Although we are doing many things, of course. For example, I like to do some things like architects, but still, I'm writing and I'm talking, as you can see, too much. So, and this is the main point I wanted to present to you. And on the right side up, you can see Lefebvre understanding of that. So I'm not discovering the wheel again, but this is not the same. I wanted to say, so perceived space, lived space, and conceived space is pretty much just the explanation of the different moods of space, or if someone really making the space, or someone just observing it, or living in it. So, but I think it's very good corresponding with these three. I don't know if it's good or not, but I think this is my my take on these three cognitions. So for the end, so architecture a reflection of society through time, through the time, of course, is changing, and this is for the good. I think we are more coming together, and I will not read all of that or thinking about that. You can see on the screen. So we can coming from Vitruvius, and we all know those three again holy grails of architecture, and so, or those that are building the spaces of firmitas, utilitas, and venustas. I think that half, or even more than the half of architects, they're still thinking about these three things, that they are most important or they are crucial. And then we had social Darwinism, which was basically also the same with the sociology or social sciences. Then a very crucial moment in the history or in the time of reflection of space, which is more inclined toward ours, let's say, or compatible. So it is modernism or humanism dualism. In a way, modernism, of course, as I said before, is pretty much the same as the process of modernity. And I also think that we borrowed this term, and everything, not everything, much of it from architects. And this is quite important. And this was after the World War First. And there was, as you know, if someone, historians among you would know better than me, that functionalist architecture movement emerged as a part of modernism, just a part of modernism, and so on, so and so. And of course, there were all ideas inspired by the better world. If they envisage better world like us, sociologists at that time, I wouldn't say so. And we know some nasty unintended consequences, especially with Le Corbusier. They said he was a good architect, but catastrophic urbanist planner. And then postmodern. This is, for example, Le Corbusier, Bauhaus, Mies van der Rohe. So postmodernism, visual and performative, architecture. It is obvious. We are still living in that, with that iconic architecture, which is, it can be, without taste or whatever, but I'm not here to talking about taste or about, let's say, culture, capital, or whatever. All those iconic buildings, I think this is now coming to the end, except with the regime in Arab world, in China, or everywhere, which is pretty much the same as any time in history, so Versailles or whatever. So, but we are talking about, I mean, I think that we are talking about the diminishing trend. And the last one, and we are coming now, I mean, to coming together, which is more reflective and integrative social engaging. So this is adoption of architectural terminology, not just terminology, but thinking about of different things. You know, it's combining technology and not the same way like before, but and everything. So and engaging with social scientists and social thinkers and ordinary people thinking about space, you know, really. So about social housing, but in a real way, not just what the proposal of Le Corbusier was, which was catastrophic, of course, but reflective and integrative social engaging. And if you, for example, very good example of that would be, for example, events, architectural events, important events. For example, Biennale. I follow Biennale for 20 years now, and from 15 on, you know, it is not much just architecture, it's everything social. You know, some architects criticizing Caravena with his social housing and social thinking and so, but he's here to stay. Koolhaas, for example, you know, you can criticize him as an architect, but it's just vice versa, like the Corbusier. He has a social institute with a lot of different profiles and so on. So also sociologists and so. And for example, I'm stating here Patrick Schumacher, who is conservative, but using Luhmann system theory to comprehend all those things. And of course, Athens Charter was a turning point I mean, at that time, urbanism took off really. So of course, urban thinking and urban planning or whatever was present, let's say, in Rome or in Greek cities or whatever. But the real urban planning, which is multidisciplinary, took off after the First World War, and it was very, very crucial, although, as I said before, with a lot of unintended consequences, all those housing estates and so, and but what is interesting also, you know, that socialism and humanism was pretty much in the same way, you know, even though, you know, we can think about that it's not really the truth. But I think that functionality and humanism wanted to coming together. It was not really good always, but just the beginning. So spatial form and let's say social form contact were coming together, and this was really beginning of modern urban planning. Of course, because of necessity, but also because of all those perturbations at that time, and it is quite normally. I don't need to talk much about that. And this is I'm finishing here. So I think that I think it's obvious that we have to think about different education from kindergarten on, and I think if you want to think about beyond collaboration, as in socials or in sciences or academia, you know, we are always talking about interdisciplinarity, cross-disciplinarity, and everything. But we are just talking about. Let's face it, it's not much interdisciplinarity in reality. I'm working with now, because I'm doing some centrometrics and so on. So I'm doing with agricultural engineer, or let's say doctor. I have a really, and he with me, a very immense problems how to come together with real, interdisciplinarity. So I think the only, the answer for that would be, and we are talking about beyond collaboration, just one near another. So this is not the logic of addition, additive logic, but it's a logic of merging things. You know, a reflection and all cognitive styles more coming really together. So we have to learn something about spatial projections, above, down, on site, and everything. You know, us architects should learn something more about the complexity and all those things about structure, agency, or all those things in social sciences. So cross education, I think it's better. It's better term for that. And some young colleagues, I'm really proud of them, and probably they are thinking about this much better than me. Maybe, I don't know, because I don't know them in person. But a young lady, French lady in Berlin, in Technical University, came with that let's say right scheme, and she's also concerned. She's also determined that even in academia, we have to find some common ground between architectural research and sociological, or let's say social sciences research. But also, I don't know if I have here just to make an end. Oh, no, nothing. I didn't put it. So I'm engaged in one such let's say enterprise, because scientification of architecture, it seems for some quite unnecessary, let's say, to be blunt. But of course, you know, in one way it is true, in one way it is not true, of course, because I can see that it is productive, you know, because I'm evaluating some program, or concretely one PhD candidate, and she's doing PhD through design research. And here is the question: is it design research any scientific? Is it scientific? It has any methodology, epistemology, or so, which is typical for science? But I think, you know, that we can come together and we can do something about that. And this CARE program CR2RE program, it's international, it's not just European, it's worldwide. And we are doing on that for some years now. And I didn't say everything I wanted to, but look, I'm always talking too much, and maybe I didn't express everything right, but I hope you're making some sense of it. So thank you very much, and I hope we could discuss we could discuss those questions here.
Thank you very much, Marjan.
Yeah.
Yes, I might challenge you a bit and say, okay, you are into sociology and architecture, but there is philosophy, to ask questions that actually continue the line of your thought, philosophy of architecture as well. But I will not be the one to ask questions here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but if I can comment about
here is Emilia. She would I prefer leaving fellows asking questions, but then we can discuss it, of course. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your presentation, and I would immensely appreciate also to take more time to discuss this topic. So thank you for the generosity of your presentation. I am one of the philosophers, so what you said made me think of a book that I recently read, written by a philosopher who is Beatriz Preciado. She's she is Spanish.
I read it,
and
yes.
he now, yes. But
he.
it is from 2010, so yeah, the transformation was still going on. So I wanted to ask you if this kind of research, so this attempt to really link, as you said, society and architectural studies and philosophy, and also in the aim of really create a desire, might be something interesting in your studies, or if in your opinion there is a lack of scientificity in here, if
Yes.
so if it is something that you can consider in your studies, or if it is excluded for a particular reason. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. A very good question, and I'm aware, of course, of philosophy of architecture, which is I should say maybe even more profound. But look, not always, but sometimes with philosophy and actual researching, because it's more about ontology of things, So we are talking about what is really, really crucial for the space, And if you think about coming together research-wise, I think sociological, epistemology it could be more empirical, We can do some more, some different, we can use some different empirical methods, So not just writing about it, and although I'm aware it is very important too, but for example, that young colleague you'll find her probably, and there are others, also philosophers there, that they're doing together, but the epistemology, or let's say the methods of researching those questions, I think it's more sociological, because with all those empirical prerequisites, let's say questionnaires or other things, other things that are it's difficult to say if they are practical, because practicality could be many things, but as far as I know, and as I'm doing with some architects, I think I think that architects are better with philosophers, because it's overwhelming for them. It's so crazy and it's so good and everything, For example, as you probably know, Martin Heidegger was quite, reference for architects. Although I think, in really, really, mostly in really conservative terms, but of course, newer philosophers are coming together with architects. For example, Luhmann, a sociologist and philosopher, with his systemic theory, and but again, I have an impression, I don't know why, but I have an impression that this is all about searching for the true with architects. When they are comforting with us sociologists, but not just sociologists, anthropologists or whatever, but mainly sociologists, they are more grounded. They should be more grounded, because we are not just discussing things, We want things to show and to work in practical terms when we are building the buildings, but just not, okay, whether it is, particular building or assemblage, as Bruno Latour would say, city or real or some estates, housing estate or whatever, So this is my take on philosophy, but I respect it. Probably I don't know enough of it, but I think, look, we sociologists are dependent on philosophy. All social sciences is dependent on philosophy. We have to face it, after all. So I'm okay. This is my take on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dino, please. Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank Professor Hočevar for this wonderful presentation. And it was the whole debate between architects and social scientists was of a particular interest for me, as I have a degree in cultural studies, but I also have a close family member who is an architect. So we sometimes talk about these things and always find each other at a kind of an intersection, which is because of all the things that you mentioned. But then but then if we add to this equation the fact that I myself am a wheelchair user, that's again a whole different perspective. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I find really interesting your illustration with pieces of paper, and because this is exactly how I feel when I'm having these kind of conversations. And if I would like to make a suggestion, if I may, that nowadays maybe we should try to rethink the definition of architect as one who not only oversees the construction of building, as it's stated here, but the construction of space in general. I mean, the space in the broadest sense. But I must say that this is my humble opinion, as I'm much more comfortable with the theory of Lefebvre than some other architectural theories. Thank you.
Thank you, Tino. Yeah, I agree with you, and I think you're making a good point. For example, I can tell you, I don't know how it's in Croatia or in other countries, but just now, as we speak in Slovenia, the fighting between construction engineers and architects are going on, and it's it's becoming very political, because so we are in the period of elections and so on. So and what is the point? So the architects would argue, that they should oversee the building sites and everything around, because the culture of space is much more important, or not just more important, but it's more inclusive and everything, than, for example, statics of a space, what construction engineers would say, And for example, I follow all that debate. I can tell you, and this is again a bit political or a bit social, because you guess what? We have two camps of sociologists and cultural critics, or culturologists too, So one would say architects are those that they need to oversee all those laws and everything's about constructing and everything, you know, because they are more comprehensive and everything, you know. But conservative sociologists and also, of course, conservative politicians would say, no. Slovenia is very specific. We are a rural nation. We don't care much about cities, you know. We need to solve the problems of simple people or common people and so on. So no, we need just a construction engineer to oversee everything, you know. So the beauty of it, the culture of space and place and everything is not important. And and this is, I think this is a kind of representation of what you said before. And also, you know, within social science, within sociology, you know, I think the classical sociology is diminishing, you know, in favor of cultural studies. I don't think this is good, because I think there are two different perspectives, but they also need to come together, you know. Definitely. As I said before, you know, as a classical sociologist, you know, people are talking mostly about inequalities and all those certifications. But culturalists, you know, they would say no, difference is much important, you know. Nowadays, you know, all those inequalities coming from denying of differences, everything, you know. But I think, you know, we have to come together, because we are talking about the same thing. Inequality and searching for difference is the same, and it's the same in architecture and in urbanism.
If I may, Marjan, because Tino is collaborating a lot with the Center for Advanced Studies, and we work a lot on universal design. Things that we are having on campus, and Tino is activist. We are having an office for also universal design, and paying much of attention to this. And this is just to add. So, hi, Tino, nice to see you again. This is it. Maybe someone else has any other question? Petar? I just need to excuse myself because I'm in the nature, as you may see.
Lucky you.
So if my computer goes down, Tina will go on and continue moderating, and I will continue my walk in space, not in digital realms.
Perfect.
Hello, Marjan. Hello. And I'm very happy that you are with us, and I'd like to see you here in Rijeka. I hope very soon, because you announce your presence here.
You are that one. Okay. Now I know who you are.
I'm trying to be that one. Yeah.
Okay.
Happy
to see you.
Marjan, just two things. First, that we have in CRES at the beginning of May, that means from 3 to 7, one kind of colloquium, architecture and philosophy together. That means Center for Advanced Studies, Delta Lab, Belgrade Faculty of Architecture, TU Berlin, and the Politecnico Torino. This is colloquium or summer school architecture and philosophy. We spent several sessions in international university center in Dubrovnik last 5 years, I think. And this year we are here, and you are welcome if you have a time to join us. My small contribution to your talk could be I'm proposing you to just one comment, because I always have a problem with this sentence. This is sentence from Peter Eisenman. Peter Eisenman in 2008 had his talk in Royal Incorporation of Architects in Scotland. And if you put, all of you, if you put in Google Eisenman's 6-point plan, you will find this lecture from 2008.
I've heard
And
it. I've heard it.
at the end of this lecture exists point 6, and I quote, "To be an architect is a social act. To be an architect is a social act." And I quote Eisenman, "People always say formalism is the project of architecture's autonomists. For me, it is precisely this autonomy which is architecture's delay of engaging with society." And then this important,
I know.
if it is architecture's activity and its own discourse, which in fact impacts society, then to be an architect is a social act. Okay, for me, always bizarre, because generally, well, architect produces social acts. Here we can find something different, something more special, that to be an architect, or we can say architecture as such, is social act. Please, well, comment for us if you have some kind of explanation of this phrase, could be useful for me, of course.
Architecture is a social act, and there are many, not in that particular words, they said something like that, you know. But as I said, autonomy. So autonomy, I try to reconcile, as I said before, autonomy and integration. You know, of course I agree. Architects should stay still architects, you know, and autonomous. For example, my colleague at the Faculty of Architecture said to me, you know, you have to be, you don't need to preach us architectural theory or philosophy or whatever, you know, we can do it ourselves. And I think that, but in other words, you know, we were talking about a conference a few months ago, you know, if you just state that that architecture is a social act, there is nothing to talk about it. Of course, it is social act. It's material social act, but it could be different. I mean, you know, it's not necessarily that we just say it's a social act. It's a social. It's a political. It's aesthetic. It's there are many you know aspects what architectural act could be, but. Look, I agree with that, but I think that that architects are still somehow, you know, they want to engage, and they understand. Of course, they understand sometimes much better than us, you know, social scientists. But they are still, I think, really much rooted into the mission, you know, into the mission. And I think that this is that they will transform society, as Herbert Gans said years